as you can see. And right now, we're right in the middle of dealing with all the turkeys because the Thanksgiving is coming, and we spent all year raising turkeys to put turkey on the table for families in our community. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the turkeys. You can see them here. They're all gathered up because they're very curious what we're doing. The group here they're all white. We raise a kind of breed called a broad-breasted white. That is kind of the standard farm turkey that everybody raises. There's about 300 turkeys in this pen here, 300, maybe 280. And this is how they spend the entire time while they're here on the farm. We do raise them when we first get them as little babies. We raise them inside until they get their feathers on, and then they come outside. But as you can see, they don't really need that much. They have a structure there in the middle of their pen here, and that's where they spend the night. They just need to be able to get up off the ground, and they need a little cover protection from the rain, and that's all they need. And then in the back, you can see hopefully you can see it, there's two gray things. Those are the feeders. So each of those feeders holds 300 pounds of feed. And at this time of the year, when they're fully grown, they're eating a lot, just like a normal teenager would. And we're filling those feeders every day. So they're going through about 600 pounds of feed every day. So today and tomorrow, and then again on Monday, we will walk a portion of this flock up to our processing facility where we turn what you see here into something that's ready for your table and your oven. So it takes us quite a bit of work. It's been a long year raising them, taking care of them. The birds that you see here are about 16 weeks old. It doesn't take very long. And yeah, there's not much to say. Here on the farm, all the animals that we raise on the farm have jobs in the field. And the turkeys have had a pretty important job this year as they've been living here in the field. And their job is to clean up weeds and anything that's been overgrown. So we put them in areas of the field that would have a weed that we don't want in the field. And what they do is they eat everything. So they strip all the foliage off and they help us control weeds. At this age, they're moved once a week. They were just moved yesterday. And we do that because they need to be on fresh grass, that we don't want their manure to build up. And it gives them a better time out here in the field as well. So they're one of the more curious animals on the farm. They're usually, when you walk up to the pen, they're kind of like they have now. They walk right up to you. They want to know what you're doing. And they're a little bit like dogs. They will follow you around. You can't talk to them. They're talking to each other now. They're very vocal. You can see them running. They're probably the funnest animal to watch run because they're so awkward with those long spindly legs. So yeah, I also want to encourage questions. So I know that you're going to be typing those in and sending them. I can pause at different points too to have questions. It would be good to get some questions so I know what you're interested in learning about. Okay, and why don't we go to some of the questions now, if Mariana, if there's questions you feel like you can read.
Yes, we've got a few questions. Our first one is, what kind of food do turkeys eat?
That's a good question. So our turkeys, because they're outside, they have a couple choices. They primarily eat what's in those grain feeders. We call that feeding the birds a ration. So that feed is just a little pellet. It's similar to, I think some of the classes have examples of feed. That's what's in those feeders, and it is a corn-free and soy-free feed. So it's got things like wheat and barley and peas and those kinds of things. When they're outside, of course, they don't eat just that. They come and they graze. They'll eat the grass on the ground. They'll also pick up any kind of bug or little insect crawling around. They'll eat those too. And one of the really interesting things about all poultry is their stomach, they don't really have a stomach. They have what's called a gizzard. And it's an organ that all the feed goes into. And in that gizzard, they need what's called grit. They need something hard. Because what happens is that muscle, the gizzard, squeezes against the food and uses the grit, the hard things, to grind up the food. and that's how they eat. Turkeys, because they're so big, need large, big things to get into their stomach or their gizzard. So they'll pick up all kinds of things off the field. And when we open up the gizzards and we see what they've been eating as grit to get into their stomach or their gizzard, we find all kinds of things. We found polished glass. We found tools that we've dropped in the field. We found like jewelry that has been dropped by farmers, all kinds of screws, metal pieces, everything. It's amazing what turkeys can actually get in there and not be hurt to grind up their food. So hopefully that answers the question. Are there any other questions?
We've got a few more. How long have you been farming turkeys?
So we started farming turkeys a little bit after we started farming. I started farming full time the farm started in 2012. It was part time, so I was working as an engineer. I went full time in 2017. We started doing turkeys in 2013, I believe, is the first year we did them, and we've done turkeys every year since. This year, we'll end up doing about 400 to 500 turkeys in total, and all of them we sell here at the farm.
Our students would also like to know why and how do you move the turkeys?
Fortunately, turkeys, again, are kind of like dogs. They're pretty tame. They want to be around you. So what happens is this netting that hopefully you can see, it's electrified, and that's what keeps them inside. So when it's time to move them, we take the netting down, we set the netting up in a different spot, and then the tractor is used to move their structure and the feeders. The water is just a small tub of water that has a valve in it that keeps it full of water. And then we kind of the turkeys are more interested in the new spot. And so they just kind of walk into the new spot. If they don't, we kind of just guide them in there gently. But it's actually a lot easier than you may think. It's not like we've got a whole bunch of cats out here that we're trying to keep in one spot. They definitely kind of follow instructions.
Miss Megan's class wants to know, do the turkeys come in different colors?
So turkeys in general do come in different colors. We raise one specific breed, which is why they all look the same. And again, that breed is called broad-breasted white. There's a broad-breasted bronze that is the more traditional sort of gray and black and striped color. And that's a different type of commercial breed. And then you can get into all the different heritage breeds or turkeys that were developed a long time ago, and they have all kinds of different colorations. So we're going to start walking, but I want to keep answering questions. We're going to go over and look at the layers, but I'm happy to keep answering questions about turkeys or anything else that you might ask.
Miss Schaefer's class wants to know, do you have different breeds on this farm? But I do believe you just answered that. You only have this one breed.
That's correct. We just raised the broad-breasted whites. It makes it a lot easier for us if it's just one breed because they grow all at the same rate and it's easier for us to manage.
Minter Bridge Elementary is curious, how long does it take for a turkey egg to hatch?
That is a good question. I'm not entirely sure I know the incubation period for an egg because we don't hatch them here. We buy day-old chicks from a hatchery. So their job is to take fertilized eggs and hatch them. And then, believe it or not, they put all the day-old turkey chicks into a box with a bunch of holes in it so they can breathe. And they put it in the mail and they send it to the post office here in Hillsboro where we go pick them up. So all of our chicken and all of our turkey are actually sent through the mail. We don't hatch here. They do it takes similar to what a chicken takes, around 20 to 30 days, I believe, is the time it takes for an egg to hatch.
Computer's class is curious on how you protect the turkeys from predators.
That's a really good question and something that we definitely deal with a lot here at the farm. The main predators here on the farm are actually red-tailed hawks and bald eagles. And for that, we have two livestock guardian dogs that are not in the field right now because we are. Because they're livestock guardian dogs, they're used to be strangers, so they get very protective. But they do a really good job of hanging out with the chickens, and if they see the red-tailed hawks or the bald eagles or really anything else, they'll make sure that those birds don't land in the field or take any of the chickens. The other predator we have that's very common out here is coyotes. Coyotes tend to stay out of the field unless there's a hole in the fence or unless they dig underneath the fence and get into the field. And when they do that, the dogs will, if they find a coyote, they'll either chase it out of the field or they will actually end up killing the coyote, which does happen.
The Minter Bridge kindergartners are wondering, how many turkeys do you have?
So right now in that pen, let me do the math because there was probably 255 to be more specific, because they have started working on them. So they took a group of about 50 or 60 out of the main group there. So that's about the biggest that we can raise to, is about 400 turkeys.
Mrs. Lee's second graders want to know, do you like raising turkeys and what other animals are on the farm?
I absolutely love raising turkeys. And if I could raise turkeys all year long, I would love to. But unfortunately, everybody just wants to eat turkey once a year. I love them. They're a lot of fun. The other animals that we have on the farm, we have pigs for pork, and we have 12 left. And they'll be harvested here next week, and then we'll be done with pork. We have obviously these laying chickens that we're going to look at and talk about here. We've got beef that's, I don't know if you can see them, but there's 6 cows or steers way down at the end of the field. And then we don't have any on the farm right now because we're all done, but we do meat chickens. So meat chickens and chickens that we use for eggs are 2 very different types of chickens. And we're all done doing the meat chickens because that's seasonal. We just do it in the summer. And that's what we have on the farm.
The students have a lot of questions about turkey feathers. Do you know how many feathers they have and why they have feathers?
Well, they have feathers to keep warm. It's and dry. So they have an oil gland on their tail. They pick up oil from that gland and they spread it on their feathers, and that's how they stay waterproof. The feathers also keep them warm, and that's how they can be outside in the cold. I don't know, I can't say that I've ever counted the number of feathers on a turkey, but it's more than some and probably less than 1 billion. I think just for timing and everything, what I'll do now is just talk real briefly about the layers where we're standing here, and then we can still continue to take questions after I'm done. So just really briefly, we have a flock, we call it a laying flock. As you can see, they're kind of roaming around. The livestock guardian dogs that I talked about earlier, that their main job really is protecting these chickens. They live in these 2 houses. Their job is to lay eggs, obviously, and then they actually will scratch through the cow manure to get the bugs that are in the cow manure. Those bugs will grow up to be a fly, and that fly will bother the cows. So the chickens, these laying chickens, by eating the insects that are in the cow pies, protect the cows from the flies. And I don't know if we can see here, but this is a cow pie that the laying chickens have scratched all up and eaten all the bugs out of. So this is exactly what they're supposed to do. And it makes me very happy to see that. A lot of farming is dealing with animal poop, unfortunately, and that's just the way it is. So if we walk over here, I can show you inside one of their houses. These are called chicken coops. The chicken coops are moved every day. And the birds are allowed to kind of roam where they need to roam. I'll open this up here. We need these chicken coops because this is where they lay their eggs, and this is where they sleep at night. Otherwise, they like to be outside. So we can see inside there, we've got the nest boxes on the left-hand side. That's where they lay eggs. And then all of the wood and perches and stuff on the right-hand side there, that's where they sleep at night. And this keeps them dry and somewhat warm, but their feathers keep them pretty warm too. If we come over here, when it's time to collect eggs, they haven't collected eggs yet today. They don't actually have to go inside. They can just lift these doors. And you can see there's chickens in there laying eggs. There's eggs in the boxes. Right now, we have 100 laying chickens, and we're collecting roughly 20 dozen eggs a day. All those eggs are collected here every day. They are washed and then packed, and then they're put up in the store and we sell them. So I think I'll pause there for a minute. Oh, we've got a little rogue here. So sometimes they just lay where they feel like they lay, and it's out in the field. So there's a lot of little surprises out in the fields. The crows and the ravens enjoy those because they hang out and pick these up and fly off and eat them. So I think with that too, I'll pause here and see if we have some more questions. And turkeys or layers or anything else related to the farm or any question really.
The students would like to know how many chickens you have and whether you have more chickens.
So yeah, so out here, this flock here is about 600. We have about 200 in the brooder waiting to get old enough out, so they'll join the flock. We'll be at about 800. Next year, we're going to be getting the flock up 1,200 birds. That's where I like to be, because that's the number of eggs we need to meet the customer demand. So it's more than a few chickens.
Connor from Miss Stepp's class wants to know, what do your chickens eat?
So that's a good question. We can actually go look at their food. They eat very similar to how the turkeys eat. They'll eat a ration again, but they definitely eat more off of the field, so grass and bugs and everything like that. So they also have the gray style feeders. This is what they eat. It's just pelletized feed. It's got the wheat in it and barley and peas, no corn, no soy. And they're very interested in what we're doing here.
Miss Catherall's class is wondering, why do they have to sleep off the ground?
It's a way that they feel safe, and it's also a way that they can stay dry. So they do what's called perching, and they want to be up off the ground. You can imagine if they were out in the wild, being on the ground would expose them to being attacked by predators. So that's how they keep themselves safe when they go to sleep.
The students are also wondering if you have any roosters.
We do have some roosters. In fact, we can probably see some. Well, that's a rooster right there. So the ones that crow like that. We do have a few roosters. They come when we order the baby chickens. They don't always guarantee that we get 100% girls. We do keep the roosters, even though they don't obviously produce eggs, but they are protective of the hens. So they'll be watching for predators and trouble when the hens are busy scratching through the grass. So yeah, we do have, I'd say probably about 6 or 8 roosters right now.
Miss Viega's class is curious, how old do your chickens get?
So the laying chickens, we will keep them here on the farm until they get into their 3rd year. In their 3rd year, they will go up to our processing facility, and we turn them into what's called a stewing hen that we then sell in the store. We have to do that because after 3 years, in their 3rd year and any older, they slow down their egg laying substantially. So because we're a business and we're doing this, to earn a living, the chickens have to be able to lay lots of eggs. And when they slow down, you still have to feed them, so the costs outweigh the benefits of the eggs they lay. So right now, you can see we've basically got two types of birds. There are these red birds, which are called Rhode Island Reds, and then the black and white birds, which are called Plymouth Barred Rocks. The Plymouth Barred Rocks are in their second year. The Rhode Island Reds, this is their first year, and that's how we keep track of everybody's age. We buy a different breed every year.
Stanfield fourth graders are curious, what do the chickens drink?
So they just drink water, and you can see the water comes with them in their coops. Here called it. So they attack. Well, these here, if they just push on it, water comes out, and they drink that. This water is connected to a barrel over here that once a day we come, and part of their chores is to fill the water barrel.
How many acres is your farm?
The property is 47 acres roughly, and we're farming roughly 30 acres of that.
Mrs. Lee's second grade class wants to know, how long do you work in a day and when did you start farming?
I started farming in 2012, and right now that's a good question because everybody here on the farm is working as much as they possibly can. So I started my day today at 6:30, and I probably won't go home and leave the farm until after 9 o'clock. So I'm working anywhere like 12 hours this time of year would be kind of a short day. It's going to be more like 14 hours a day. And I will, starting on today's Thursday, starting on Tuesday, 2 days ago, I'll work now 9 days straight right until Thanksgiving. I do take Thanksgiving off and go have, one of the turkeys that I've grown with my family. But yeah, this is a very, very busy time of year right now.
Mrs. Mishkis is curious from the source, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
That's a good question, and trying to think of a snappy way I've asked all the chickens. I sent an email out. We've had a couple meetings, and the chickens are even divided on that answer. They're not entirely sure, and I figure if the chickens can't tell me, then I probably am not going to be able to guess.
Mrs. Schaefer's class, going back to the turkeys, is curious, what is the average weight of your breed of turkey?
In a normal year, and we are not in a normal year, but a normal year, the average weight will be 16 pounds. I'm guessing the average weight this year will be less, in the 14, 13 pound range. They do get as big as 22 pounds. And just before we started, I looked at one that had been processed, and it's the smallest one that's up there. It was almost 7 pounds. So there's a big range of weights.
Cameron is curious, can your chickens fly?
Yes, they can. They don't really like to, actually. They prefer to run. Chickens were kind of developed in the jungles of our world, and so they're very good at running underneath underbrush and trees. The breeds that we have are not what's called flighty. So if a bird likes to fly a lot, we call that flighty. There is a kind of chicken or breed of laying chicken called an Americana, and they are very flighty. And because we're 47 acres, 30 acres farm, we don't really care too much if they're flighty. The only problem is if they decide to go up and over the fence that's around the property, which they typically don't, because they understand home are these two coops, all the food is here, the water is here, all that kind of stuff.
Abby is curious, what is the funniest place you have found a turkey or a chicken?
Boy, that's a good question. So, the funniest place. The chickens, especially because they can wander, They get in. They have gotten in everywhere. They'll go up to the store. There was a group of ladies, chickens, that is hens. They discovered that if they pushed themselves through the fence and went up to the store, they could actually spend the night on top of all of the chicken feed bags and the chicken feed totes and stuff. They were living their best life there because there was no predators up there. They were in the barn. They had more food that they could ever possibly eat. The problem is they're not potty trained, and I'm not putting a diaper on them, so they were pretty messy. So we had to take them back down, put them back in with the flock. I'm sure they're super bummed out about that.
Well, we're all out of time for today. Our last question for you is, what do you enjoy most about being a farmer, and where can they find your products?
That's a good question. I love being outside. I love working with the animals, and I have a real passion for providing food for other people. I like meeting people who eat our food, and food is a great way for people to connect, and I really enjoy that part. I also like being able to be my own boss, and decide what I want to do and when I want to do it. If you're interested in and want to buy these eggs or buy a turkey, we don't have any fresh left, but we do have some frozen ones that we grew in July. Do have some of those left. All of those can be bought in our store here that's on the property. It's the red building up here. Or you can go online and reserve one of the turkeys. We've got a few other things that are for sale online as well, and that would be at marionacres.com.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for taking time to talk with students about turkeys and chickens. And thank you to all the students in classrooms for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day and enjoy the weather.